All right, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Hopefully, you're able to join us live, but if not, please hit replay if you're watching it after the fact so we can know that you were here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marcy Thomas, and I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective and the BGC Book Club, which we've been sharing great stories from wonderful Black women writers and authors and poets for the last year and a half or so. So I want to welcome you to this particular event, which is going to be unlike any other because this is a book that I really loved and I've already shared with the author that I loved it. It's one of my top 3 of the year, actually. So I hope that as we talk about the story that you will be encouraged to read it as well. As you're joining in the room, please drop in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from, just so we can kind of have an idea of who all is here. I am actually based in the Atlanta, Georgia area, which is actually one of the locations in the book. I didn't tell Suzette that, but I'm in Atlanta, not a native, but currently living here. So if you want to drop in the comments, please let us know where you're joining us from. And without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and get into telling you a little bit about the author and then sharing a book trailer that we have for the book we'll be discussing this evening. Now, Suzette D. Harrison is a native Californian and the middle of 3 daughters who grew up in a home where reading was required, not requested. Sound like my house. Her literary career began in junior high with the publishing of her poetry. While Mrs. Harrison pays homage to Alex Haley, Gloria Naylor, Alice Walker, Langston Hughes, and Toni Morrison as legends who inspired her creativity, it was Dr. Maya Angelou whose I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings that unleashed her writing. And I just have to share this real quick. This is my Maya Angelou doll, so I love Maya as well. Suzette is the award-winning author of Taffy, and 8 other books that include romance novels, historical fiction, and a children's story. She is a wife and mother who holds a culinary degree in pastry and baking, and she is currently cooking up her next novel in between batches of cupcakes. So tonight we'll be discussing one of her most recent novels, The Girl at the Back of the Bus. And if you give me just a second here, I'm going to show you that trailer. So give me one moment and I'll get that pulled up for us. One second.
Magnolias, tea cakes, 16 and pregnant, fine wine, Ivy League, denied promotions, collapsed dreams, 2 women, 1 family, love, honor, destiny. Discover their incredible story in The Girl at the Back of the Bus. Available wherever fine books are sold.
All right, and we're here. Yeah, see, that was magic. A little Black girl magic for you all. So, welcome, Suzette. It's such an honor to have you here with us this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Miss Marcy. It's an honor to be here. I had to grab a tissue watching that trailer like I didn't know what was going to happen.
Right, right. And for those who may not have been paying attention, that's actually your voice. So I love it. I was like, oh, okay. I like the way she, introduced that.
Thank you.
So
Such an
once again,
honor.
yes, so welcome, welcome. And as I've already mentioned to the audience and shared with you that really is sincerely one of the best books that I have read this year, out of all the reading that we do here in the book club. I really loved it for so many reasons. It is a story that, the trailer kind of tells you about two different women who are a part of a family, one from one generation, one from another, and just, the things that happen to them throughout their lives, the parallels, and, both within their lives and even in the ways that they deal with things differently, similar situations, but in different ways. So, it was just a rich story. And I really appreciate you for writing it. I thank you for that.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. You're so kind. You must want to be using this tissue all night, huh?
That's fine. That's fine. So just tell us a little bit about you and your journey to writing, because as I mentioned, you've written like 10 books altogether as of right now that we're aware of. So I know writers are always writing. Yes, so what is it that led you to this particular book? And this is, once again, for those who might be joining late, The Girl at the Back of the Bus.
It was a conversation, actually, just a conversation between women and just discussing, Black history and the importance of women, and landed on Rosa Parks. And so one of the things I do, Miss Marcy, as a writer, I like to ask what if questions. They always kind of unlock and lead me somewhere, lead me down a trail. And I remember thinking, well, what if there was a young girl on that bus? How was her life impacted? And then, of course, it's, well, why is she on that bus? And what did she see? And what she saw, how did it influence her life or her choices or her decisions? So that's how we got there. But one of the things that I always try to do in my writing is to put Black women forward. Absolutely. Always make sure that Black women are at the center of my narratives. Of course, there'll be, books where I may have a Black man as the center. That hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
But, brothers, I haven't forgotten you.
Right.
Black, female-centered, Black female forward. That said, I remember a book that I read when I was in college. It was called The Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Dr. Derek Bell. And part of his premise or argument was that Black people as a whole are at the bottom of society, but Black women have been placed even at lower than that. So again, it's my agenda to pull Black women up in our narratives, to put a center. And that made me again think, well, what about a young Black, faceless, nameless, invisible, powerless Black teenager woman? And that's kind of how that all came about.
Okay. And I really like that because, of course, as those of you who've been following Brown Girl Collective for a while, or if you don't know, that one of the things that I've kind of over the years built up the audience, and people really come here looking for things to hear about women's stories and talk about history and things like that. So I thought it was really great to see that, because some we know, others may not know, that, in addition to Rosa Parks and who is she's not a central part of the book, but there's something happens with Rosa Parks that sparks things with one of the main characters. But we know that even though Mrs. Parks was the one that kind of kicked things off in Montgomery, that there were actually young girls, or one in particular, Claudette Colvin, I think I'm saying it right, who was a pregnant young woman, like your main character. So I'm like, there is something, to that. So I thought that was really powerful that you did that, and those who know the history or who don't, to say, oh, okay, this is something that could, very well could have happened, because in some cases it did.
Absolutely. And in fact, there were two. Wasn't only Miss Claudette, was another young lady, Mary, I want to say last name Smith, two young women who preceded Mrs. Parks in their acts of resistance by refusing to give up their seats on a segregated bus.
So I thought that was good to just bring that element in and realize, okay, there's more to it. So, of course, and I have a lot of things because there's so many different themes in the book. So I don't know. Go ahead, because I know you have something that you want to share with us. Go ahead and share that, because I know we had the trailer, but we want to hear some of your actual writing. So I'm going to pull my face off so they can look at your beautiful face. You're reading it, and then I'll be right back.
Yes, ma'am. So, I've already been forewarned. I better not tell anything, like no spoilers. So I'm going to be good and obedient and adhere to instructions. Therefore, we're just going to read a small portion at the beginning of The Girl at the Back of the Bus. This is chapter 1, and our character is Mattie Banks. December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. Gal, get those coins in that slot or you ain't going nowhere. The driver on that first bus I'd incorrectly hopped on in my flustered state had fussed that at me. Now here I was again, fumbling, hoping the driver on this right bus didn't flare up with the same kinds of indignities. My head held low. I tried putting those coins in, hoping other riders couldn't see my face. Unlike the coins I kept fumbling with, my tears were pulled in place, unfallen as of yet. We had an agreement. Tears could flow all they wanted once I was safely situated back in the colored section, and not until then. And definitely not in front of some impatient individual responsible for driving me to freedom. Mattie Banks, get yourself together. Plopping my suitcase at my feet, I had the good sense to wipe my sweaty fingers on my skirt first. Scooping up fallen coins, I managed to get the first nickel in, but the second one felt the need to make a fool of me. I couldn't do nothing except watch it slip from my shaky grip and roll backwards down the steps into the evening, as if escaping this uncertain journey. That set the driver off. He was fussing, close to cussing, and calling me everything except a child of God and a nasty kitchen sink, when the passenger waiting to board behind me intervened. Ma'am, not that I knew every colored person in Montgomery, but he was an older, unfamiliar gentleman. He hadn't been at the bus stop a moment ago when I was praying for another way to handle my predicament. Maybe he was a heaven-sent angel I needed. Watching him mount the bus steps, I had enough sense not to correct Mr. Angel Man about my not being a ma'am. I was 16, but from the back, you wouldn't have known that. I'd had what Mama called womanish hips since turning 13. Courtesy of my situation, they'd soon be on their way to further spreading. Thanking him and standing aside, I watched Mr. Angel Man deposit my rebellious nickel and his own fare before tipping his hat and descending the front steps. Grabbing my suitcase, I followed him to the rear, hoping the annoyed driver wouldn't take off just to prove a point like some did, taking my precious 10 cents with him. I hate this double entrance dance. Drop your fare up front, hop off the bus, hightail it to the rear, and board at the back like a less than citizen. It was a belittling ballet played to the melody of racism. And that, ladies and possibly gentlemen, is the beginning of The Girl at the Back of the Bus.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just love the way that you read that as well. Did you do your own audio?
Not on the audio book.
Okay.
Two fantabulous voice actresses, Jordan Fraser and the other young lady. I'm so sorry, her name is escaping me right now, but they provided the voices of Mattie and Ashley.
Okay, great. So I guess, well, some things aren't really spoilers because it's written in, what you talk about and what the book is about. So, of course, Mattie, as you already mentioned, is this 16-year-old girl who finds herself in the family way, and she's she's on the bus with Miss Parks because she's en route to, make a decision about what she's going to do with her pregnancy.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So that's why she is on the bus. And, there are some things that transpire, and, she decides at the end of this, she's going to, after seeing the heroic act of Mrs. Parks, she makes a different decision.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. 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 Yes, ma'am Not yet. Her mind starts to
Right.
think about other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Something else happens after she witnesses Miss Parks, but it's absolutely Miss Rosa Parks' act of defiance that triggers that thought. And then again, to avoid spoilers, Maddie has an encounter with another person, but her mind keeps going back to Mrs.
Mm-hmm.
Parks, and it helps to solidify her choice. You're absolutely right in that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which I thought was good because, as I mentioned, one of the things we like to do is to learn from what happens with others, and then glean something from that, and then find our own courage or our own, whatever it is, just by being inspired by others. So I thought that that was really great. And just looking at the relationship that Maddie has with her mom, Dorothy, as well. They had a really, really good relationship, even though initially there was a secret between them.
Right, absolutely. And that the dynamic, the power of the love in their relationship, in my opinion, is what gave Maddie the courage to finally, things kind of did get taken out of her hand where she couldn't
Right.
have it so much. But it was that love that she was able to kind of fall back on and lean back on in her trying times, and when she's faced with as you've already said, so I guess I can say it too. Here she is, a 16-year-old unwed young woman in the deep South in 1955.
Right.
Now in today's world, who cares? Kind of attitude. It's not didn't have the same kind of stigma,
Mm-hmm.
being unmarried and pregnant as it did back in Maddie's time, in Maddie's days. So that love of her mother, Dorothy, who I think is one of the most incredible and fascinating women in the book, although she is a secondary
Right.
character,
Right.
she was amazing.
Right, absolutely. And just that relationship and, the journey that she took, and how, she winds up being, a single mom. And well, I mean, there's just so many themes in the book, but a couple of things that just kind of stand out to me. Of course, motherhood, and we're just talking about Maddie right now. We'll get to Ashley in a second, but motherhood and that relationship between Maddie and her mom, and then like her best friend. She has a best friend named Sadie. I just really loved seeing in this part of the story, because the story also does it's alternating chapters. Like one chapter is Maddie and her story going through the 50s, and then there's the modern day of Ashley, which is going through obviously modern times in Atlanta. But one of the things that I liked is seeing over the course of time, there were these great relationships between and amongst women, whether it was friends or, a mother daughter or aunts or cousins or whatever.
Yeah.
How important was it for you in telling the story? Was it to center the relationships between women?
That was really organic. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't like, oh, I have to have these women come and help her. It just
Mm-hmm.
like kind of unfolded organically.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I love, again, as you said, it shows the dynamics of unity and
Mm-hmm.
supporting and helping one another and the bonding of community.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear, oh, we Black folks don't stick together these days, but
Mm-hmm.
I love that this book shows examples of that dynamic of the power that's accessible when we do bond together. And not only do I always try to make my books female forward or female centered, I always try to honor those who've gone before me and who have touched my life personally.
Absolutely.
So in the second half of the book, we see Maddie and two other women who also dynamically impact her life, in addition to her mother, and that's Miss Wheatley and Miss
Mm-hmm.
Vine. So
Mm-hmm.
Miss Wheatley, I actually have a Miss Wheatley in my life.
Oh, okay,
And
good.
her
Tell us
last
about her.
name, real woman, and her name is actually Linda Wheatley.
Okay.
Miss Wheatley was this tiny little petite, or is, because she's still alive, thank you, Lord. She's this tiny petite little woman, not even 5 feet, if that,
Oh, wow.
maybe. Mother of five, dynamic. And Miss Wheatley had this big Winnebago motorhome, and
Mm-hmm.
she would pick, because her children always had so many friends. They were kind of like the house in the neighborhood that everybody wants to run to.
Mm-hmm.
And she would pick us up in this Winnebago motorhome and take us to the library.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it was like you're going to the library, you're
Mm,
going to check out books. It wasn't a question. Do you
mm,
want to go? She's taking it's library day. So
absolutely.
yeah, so that she also helped to influence my love of literacy and literature, as well as my grandmother and my mother and my aunts.
Right, and that's something, because that's something you and I have in common, the love of reading. Because with, like, when you talked about it in your bio, and then in the book, like all the things about the books and the reading, like, oh, that is so me. I can relate to that. Going to the library and checking out
Mhm.
20 books, and knowing
Yes.
you can't read them all. I have books, you can't see them, but I have bookcases on both sides. You saw, yeah, you saw them. They can't see them, but yeah, and believe it or not, they're books, other books. They're all over the place. So yes, I can definitely relate to that. And just as a point of reference, Miss Wheatley and, I'm sorry, I can't remember the other character's name right now, but they were helping Mattie when she wasn't able to continue school because she was pregnant. Because at
It's
that
divine.
time, that was a thing. And so, just the fact that they really stuck with her and helped her to make sure that she was able to get her education, that she was able to graduate, or, do her equivalency, things like that. That was just so important. Because, there were times maybe, young girls,
Mhm.
especially in that time frame, or even now, might get thrown away and say, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. And it was lovely to see some women actually stand up and help her, go to that next level.
Absolutely. And it wasn't as if there were continuancy schools or, continuation, excuse me, adult continuation schools and come back and get your GED and we'll take care of your infant for you, your child for you. We have on campus daycare. That did not exist.
No.
They had to be clever and shrewd and resourceful about what they did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about Ashley now, because Ashley is Maddie's granddaughter. And of course, she's living quite a different existence, living in Atlanta, and as an attorney. And she has some struggles. Of course, her grandmother was dealing with Jim Crow and all of the things that had to do with Jim Crow at that time. But now Ashley is an attorney who's looking to rise up and do different things, and she's dealing with her own struggles, that happen many times, have to do with racism or
Mhm.
racial matters. So tell us a little bit about Ashley.
Absolutely. What I like about Ashley, and as you said, Ashley is Maddie's granddaughter, and this book is what we call a dual timeline for those who may not be familiar with the concept, where you have your historical figure and then you have your contemporary figure, and they're alternating chapters back and forth. They're like two trains running on parallel tracks until they connect and intersect. So Ashley is Maddie's granddaughter. She's the contemporary character, and as Miss Marcy has said, she is experiencing some racial issues at work. But the the thing that I like about this, the juxtaposition. So back in Maddie's day, 1955, we had overt expression and demonstrations of racism. You had the lynchings, or not that we don't today, but they were more overt back there. You might have a cross burning on the lawn, or your business being burnt to the ground by those who object to your success because of the color of your skin. But with Ashley, you see the subtlety. Racism is subtle, it's cloaked, and it's hidden. And she's dealing with this in her own world, in her own universe, the racism. And it shows that it's not dead, it has just changed its costume.
Right.
It's changed its clothes, it's put on a new mask. And
Mm-hmm.
it's different, but there it is, and Ashley has to deal with it, and she has to make some hard decisions. And we see her struggling and wrestling. And I like even that she says, just because there's not a cross burning on my lawn doesn't mean that racism has died its rightful death. And
Mm-hmm.
to even complicate more things, she's in a romantic relationship with someone who's not African American.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God. And she struggles or struggled with that, coming to terms with that, with falling in love against her will. So, almost with someone who does not share her ethnic and cultural identity. So we see that here she is, a woman who has power, she has the education, she has the money, she has the job, and she's still having to contend with some things that have racial undertones.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was thinking, we always talk about microaggressions. So in her case, it was a lot of microaggressions. Where
Exactly.
with her grandmother, it was just aggression.
Mhm.
Period.
Right.
Period. Right. And I don't know, should we not? I'm thinking about Mattie, because Mattie and Ashley do have that in common. You can go ahead. I'll let you say it. I'll let you say it.
I'll be the spoiler. I'll be the spoiler.
Yeah, this is a spoiler.
Uh, so, interestingly enough, Maddie, we find, is pregnant at 16 by a white boy. We find Ashley, again, fully formed, fully free black woman in her 30s, lawyer. She's pregnant by a white man. And we see that there's two different they're the dynamics of their relationships are different. Again, Ashley is by choice, and it's romance and it's love. Maddie, it wasn't force. She wasn't forced against her will, but there wasn't a relationship. There was no power. There wasn't a power dynamic or choice on Maddie's part where I love this young boy and I want to be with him. It was kind of a curiosity thing, or I
Right.
think I like him, but I'm not really sure I like him, and he's putting more on it than she is. And okay, well, let's find out. And then we do find out that it doesn't work and it doesn't last for various reasons, which we will allow the reader to go and find out. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting that they both are having this experience.
Right. And that's one of the things in those parallels. I'm like, wow, I mean, it's the part of just living and breathing, that there are parallels. And then there's that parallel, how they are
Mhm.
able to have two totally different types of situations and two totally different types of relationships, so to speak. So I thought that was something. Now, one of the things about Ashley, as we mentioned, she's going through a lot of changes in her career. And as a result of that, she goes home to Valdosta, Georgia, to spend time with her family and Maddie. So that's kind of where the two
Yeah.
come together.
Yeah.
So I thought that was good to see, that to have her have a chance to go and visit her grandmother and her family and get to, learn some things about them, and that. Um, in that, we also deal with the thing of just seeing changes in the people that we love, the
Mhm.
thing of knowing that maybe someone that we love is going to pass away, and how we deal with, I guess, grieving before
Mhm.
the passing.
Absolutely. Now, I won't say exactly what Ashley's grandmother is suffering from. We'll let the reader find that out on their own. But I'll say this: it was the exact same thing that my grandmother suffered.
Okay, okay.
So writing those scenes, Miss Marcy, you talk about boohoo crying,
Mm,
because I'm like, yeah, this is. I identify personally with what Ashley is experiencing in those moments. So there were times where I had to stop writing and walk away
I can
because
imagine.
yeah, the emotion was right there, and I'm crying, and I'm like, let me take a break. Let me go take a break and just like kind of woosah, inhale, exhale, and then come back to it. But having said that, it also allowed me another opportunity to touch my grandmother,
Yes, yes.
through some of the love words that Ashley spoke to her grandmother,
Hmm.
the love talks that she gave to her grandmother, the touches, etc. It allowed me another opportunity to be with my own granny.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I know that I said to you, before we came on, that there were things that for me were somewhat
Mhm.
parallel. And I was thinking of, like, well, my dad's mom. I remember when she was in the hospital
Mhm.
and about to make her transition, that one of the things that I was doing was like rubbing her scalp and all of that. And
Yes.
I'll never forget, I'm like rubbing her scalp while
Yes.
she's laying in the hospital bed. And for I stopped for a second or whatever, and she kind of reached up, like swatted my hand, like, "Why'd you stop?" I'll never forget that. She's like, that felt good. Why did you stop rubbing my? But that was like one of the last things I remember with her. And then with my mom's mom, going to see her before she transitioned in the hospital and like cracking jokes and stuff like that, and watching her laugh and smile. So I could definitely relate to that when you have the opportunity to have those moments with someone, a loved one, and being able to share in a part of that part of their journey. So
absolutely. At the time when my granny passed, I was in college and away from home. So I had the telephone and I would call and I would sing to her.
Oh,
yeah, that was what we did. And it became kind of like our nighttime routine. And, I would call and sing her lullabies, essentially. Yeah.
So that was beautiful. And it just sounds like, even though this is for you, this is not an autobiographical work, but you were able to incorporate parts of your life and your story into that.
It absolutely. Like I said, I always try to honor those who have touched my life in some way. But what I want to say to that, sometimes as creatives, we try to find inspiration. Okay, I need to look around here and I need to go research this, and I'm waiting for this inspiration because my life is so boring. But then if sometimes when you stop, you're like, wait a minute, I could pull from the things that are within me. And sometimes they happen, you're not even really conscientiously, sometimes that they happen. It's like my Miss Wheatley. Oh, I'm just going to give her the name Miss Wheatley. But then in hindsight, it's like, wait a minute, my Miss Wheatley was also an advocate of education.
Right.
She also brought me, helped keep me in books. And, and that the way like our Miss Wheatley in the story helps Mattie in her education. And so I love it when we're able to draw from. It's like, don't despise what we think is small,
Right.
Inspiration outside of. No, these women and people that have impacted our life, they're, they dynamically impacted us.
And I just think that's a lot because, we all have stories. If we sit down and we really start thinking about some things, there are things that, sometimes it's just for you, but sometimes it can be for something that you can share, and there's a lesson in it that can, perhaps help someone else. Now, I know we're focusing on this book, but I do have a sidebar because you've written several. And I know, because I'm nosy, I know that you are a graduate of the University of California, Santa Barbara, with a degree in Black Studies. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you are, Miss Nosy. You're right.
So, so of course that informs your work. So how important was it for you, or, tell us a little bit about that process that you went through, because it does help to inform some of your novels, and some of the things that you write are historical works besides, the one we're talking about today.
I absolutely love that question. So way back in the day, my husband received a full doctoral scholarship to UC Santa Barbara. I was attending our local community college at that time. So of course he's not going to go away to college without me. So I get to go too.
Okay.
So remember, it was close to enrollment for the UC, and he challenged me and dared me to apply. I'm like, you're going to dare me to apply? Watch this. So I applied, and lo and behold, I was accepted. I was like, what? I just did it just to, prove him wrong. But I started searching for different programs of study, majors of study. And so, me, I was Miss Fancy. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go and I'm going to study French and Italian. I'm going to travel the world and see and we, Monsieur and Madame and all of that. And then I went and I looked, Miss Marcy, and French was going to take an additional 5 to 6 years. And I said, oh, no, ma'am, no, sir, that's not happening. Let me go on up in this office and see what other majors are available to me. When my eyes landed on Black history, I remember telling my Black studies, I remember telling my husband, I am going to choose Black studies because one day I'm going to be a writer. And when I write, I want to be able to draw from more than just my own personal experiences. I want to be able to share the experiences of us as a people larger and broader than my own knowledge. Honey, I did not know what I was saying.
Somebody else did.
Heaven knew, Creator Divine knew. I was
Mhm,
prophesying over myself and did not know it at the time.
mhm.
I've been writing, had been writing since I was a child, but poetry. My path and trajectory was always poetry.
Yeah.
And something turned around in my life thanks to Dr. Maya Angelou, and that's a whole other story and testimony that
Mhm.
led me to fiction. So it wasn't, until college that I was like, okay, I want to write fiction.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's what turned me. And I'm so glad that I have that degree. A lot of people ask me, did it take a lot of research to write this book? And in truth and honesty, no, because I was able to draw on the knowledge, the lessons that I remembered from Black history. Did I have to go sharpen up and brush up and, refresh? Absolutely. Refresh myself on dates, refresh
Mhm.
myself on some, names, etc. Absolutely. But it was already there in my knowledge bank, so to speak.
All right. Well, that's just good to know because, a lot of times we may or may not know,
Mhm.
where we're going, and
Yeah.
sometimes you might do a thing and not realize where it's going to end up taking you later on down the line because you think, okay, Black studies, what? Okay, maybe you can go somewhere and teach, maybe, but you might not
Mhm.
be thinking, okay, I could
Mhm.
actually use this, to inform my work on my creative work, whether it be art or the art of writing or music or plays or whatever it is that you're doing,
That's
just
right.
having that
Yes,
knowledge. And
ma'am.
by the things that you did to study, it helped kind of like, as you say, give you a groundwork,
Yes.
a ground to stand on to get that started. So I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Just a sidebar about me. Back when I was a child, I always loved reading, as we already talked about. I love music. I
Ooh.
always loved cultural things, but I went to school for business. And now looking back, it's like, man, I should have gone to school for, liberal arts or whatever, because that's really what I'm into. But I'm finding that that business knowledge helps me to do certain things and set things up and now return to that thing that I enjoyed as a child, which is Black people, Black culture, and all the years of reading Ebony and Essence and all of that, and being able to take that and parlay that into something that celebrates my people. So you just never know where that's going to come from.
Absolutely. Never throw away what you have.
Right,
Yep.
absolutely. And actually, that's a good segue because wasn't planning it, but it turns out to be one because Ashley in the book is kind of going through that. We already talked about her thing as a lawyer and, figuring out where she wants to go with her career. And one of the things that she starts thinking about is some of the stuff that she did as a child and, how she may want to pick those things back up. So, share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, as you said, I have a friend that she's an engineer and
Mm-hmm.
she's also a creative. And she's the only person I've ever met that uses, like you say, both sides of the brain, the left and the
Mm-hmm.
right brain. And I always find that fascinating. So, knowing her, it wasn't far fetched for me to design Ashley or to let Ashley be what she was, which was she's a lawyer, very successful attorney, but she's also an illustrator. She's
Mm-hmm.
also someone who drew and doodled, and her parents, would send her to camps, and she would paint and she would sketch and all of these things. And she put that aside to do the more respectable thing. Sometimes we have pressures that we put on our children, or our children grow up with expectations. And she grew up in this strong family that had, strong roots in civil rights, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was doing the dignified, let's put it like that. She was doing the dignified thing by going to pursue her degree as a lawyer, and she's argumentative by nature anyhow. So that's, but she finds herself, as you said, going back, making a turn and going back, and it's something from her grandmother that she finds that helps her. And again, no spoilers, but it helps her to go back and reclaim that part and that piece of herself that she may have, that kind of languished and had,
Mm-hmm.
been pushed aside while she was being this professional.
Mm-hmm. And how important do you think it is for us to be able to do that, though? To even if you don't do it as a career, just to be able to tap into that.
When my husband and I were talking last week, I said, part of the outcome of progress, or the benefit of progress, is choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by that, it's like, our parents, our grandparents, our forebears, our ancestors, a lot of times did what they had to, not what they wanted to. So here we are on their shoulders and resting on their backs and their strengths, and we have choice, a lot of us. And I don't think that you should ever bury a gift. Even if you want to get scriptural, even the Bible talks about not burying your light, or
Mhm.
hiding your light and not burying your talents. So just because they don't necessarily jive and meet together and mesh seamlessly does not mean that they're erroneous or invalid or insignificant.
Mhm.
And like you said, even if it's not meant for the world, what if it's just meant for you and your relaxation and
Mhm.
your serenity and the way you blow off steam and the way you relax and brings beauty or solace to you, and you feel in touch with yourself and with your deity and your creator, or how, whoever, however.
Right.
But don't throw your no, don't throw your gifts and your talents away, and don't think of them as small or insignificant just because they don't do what somebody else's does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's probably because as I'm looking behind me, the paintings that you see behind me, those are actually mine. So I know
No,
so
a
I know about
compliment.
that.
Oh, Miss
and,
Marcy.
and the crazy thing is, for me personally, I did not do art as a child. I mean, whatever you did in school, it's something that I
Yeah,
discovered as an adult, going to some of those painting with a twist. And I
yeah.
did them so much that I picked up like, oh, I could figure this out, or I could figure that out. And in the last few years, I've painted probably about 25, 30 of my own paintings, and
See?
done some things when I lived in the Savannah area, been in some shows and stuff like that. So
Wow.
yes, and this was a gift that I didn't know that I had.
What you had.
So sometimes it's just being willing to step out and do something different, to try something different, and not be afraid, whatever that is.
Right.
It could be that thing from before. It
Mhm,
could be something new that's latent that you didn't even know was
mhm.
there. But I do think it's important because, especially as Black women, we spend a whole lot of time doing all these things that we have to do,
Mhm.
and serving in service to others, and not always doing things that are in celebration of ourselves. So I just think that that's important. So that's just a bit of encouragement. And
I
you
love
do see some of
it.
that in this book as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I said to myself, I'm going to ask her about those artwork when we're offline, because I want to compliment. I'm going to compliment that artwork, and lo and behold, it's yours.
Right, right.
So,
Yes. So just
and it's like
thank
it's
you.
never
Thank you.
too late. One of my personal mottos is, as long as there's life within me, as long as there's breath within me, there's opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I'm one of these. If you can see my desk back here, the table
Mhm.
behind me, my craft table. I'm one of these person. I'll do a craft this year, a craft next year. Sometimes they sell, sometimes they don't. But I'm kind of like the person. I'm going to touch whatever comes to me. I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
Regardless, and everything is not about well, I need to sell $1 million and be an Instagram influencer, and I need to
Right.
do top this. It could be, again, it's just keeping your sanity, honey.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, and all that you deal with, as you already said, as Black women carrying the loads of the world on this, honey, it might be this. I'm making lip balm because my
Mhm.
lips are dry and I need some lip balm, and this is soothing the whole process. So
Mhm.
just do what you do without censoring yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the other things, because I'm nosy and actually mentioned this one, it's like that you have a culinary degree in pastry and baking.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, I do. So I
so that's so that's one of the other things that you do.
yeah, unfortunately, yes. My waistline can attest to that, unfortunately. But
But
I
also,
actually
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Okay, well, when my children were little, I was a stay-at-home mom, so it's, interested in finding ways also, generating income. And my grandmother was just like this phenomenal scratch baker. You know what, Granny, tell me the recipe, baby. I can't, because I don't know. I can't write the recipe down. It's a
Right.
pinch of this and a handful of that. And she was just this flawless baker, and I really wish I had paid more attention. And then my aunt and one of my uncles, just phenomenal bakers. It just like ran in the family. So I was always, baking since the age of 9, and some good, some bad. But Yeah, I've always had that passion and I wanted to learn more. I just wanted to advance the skill and I was frustrated trying to teach myself. And that's how I landed, in culinary school.
Well, that's pretty neat because in the book, there is a recipe, well, not a recipe, but there is like a theme, a thread of the women in the family knowing how to make these wonderful tea cakes. So, and then one taking the recipe of the other and tweaking it to make it even better. So I just thought that, okay, that's another thing that you injected into the book. So I thought that was great. And, just also like you mentioned that maybe you didn't get all of that from your family, but that, it made me think it is important for us that, whatever it is that, maybe something that someone in our family did, whether it's an old recipe or, for food or for whatever, it is, to learn those things and to carry on those traditions and share them with the ones that come behind you, because a lot of times those things get lost. I think of my mom's mom specifically. I mean, she loved to cook. My favorite thing of hers when I was little was chicken and dumplings.
Oh,
I never
yeah.
learned how to make chicken and dumplings.
Yeah, that's an art right there.
That's an art, absolutely. But it's just so important.
Right. And again, talking about some inspiration comes from within, and sometimes we're always looking outside. It's like, no, my grandmother was a phenomenal baker. But what I also did not know and learned after I wrote Taffy and did some family digging was that my great grandfather was actually a chef on the railroad.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so it just came in all directions. Culinary just came from it. So, I said, who, for all I know, my great somebody might have been a cook on a plantation somewhere. I don't know where it came from and how it came, but it obviously came through the lineage and the DNA.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's really good to know. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything important, because like I said, no spoilers. Just want to make sure I hit all my highlights. And I think we have pretty much hit them. So I love it. Because I normally don't do like written out questions, just kind of highlights. And, one of the things, as I mentioned, because I'm going to put the name of the book up again for those who might have missed it, that, I enjoyed the book so much that, just the things that I was able to glean and just in reading it and learning more about it. And, because I knew a little of your backgrounds, being able to say, oh, okay, I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really great. So I'm trying to think. Of course, we don't do spoilers, but like at the end of the book, or we get to see that different transitions are being made, and decisions are happening for Ashley specifically. And I thought that it was great that and her character is able to, after spending time with family and learning some things about them, some family secrets, getting more in touch with herself and what she wanted, that she was able to approach life in a different way. So how important was it for you to have her come to this journey, or this juxtaposition of her life at the end of the story?
It's kind of like, just like Miz Rosa inspired Mattie at the beginning. Here, Ashley she gets inspiration from within her own, family clan, family unit, finds that living history right there amongst her, and her blood, her DNA. Here's some living history that I can draw from, that strengthens and that empowers me. And a lot of times, especially Black families, we keep so many secrets. There's so many secrets, so many things in the closet that we're not supposed to touch, and that's off limits, and don't ask. And even a couple of months ago, I remember asking my mother something as simple as my parents' anniversary date. Parents divorced when I was little. She's like, "Oh my goodness, you girls don't know that, do you?" And I need to tell you some things. There's so many things that we don't tell, and sometimes it's to protect the self of the bearer of the keeper of the secrets. Sometimes it's just oversight, and it made me think about, what about the stories my children don't know about me? And what if they did know, and how that could help them? I know them and I just assume that they're, again, my life is boring, it's uninteresting, nobody wants to hear that. But we don't know the value of the story and the
Absolutely.
value, the value that it could be to the next generation, the next those that are coming up behind us, even those that are next to us, how their
Mm-hmm.
story can help enlighten, inspire, encourage, uplift someone. So I think it is important not to be so secretive. And a lot of that secrecy too, don't be ashamed.
Right. Right.
We
Right.
don't have to be ashamed of what the past is, just that. It's the past. And sometimes we live in shame and embarrassment. And again, and some of us lack of value of our story. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore we don't tell it. Let the next person decide if it's salient and applicable to them or not.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's probably one of the greatest takeaways just from the story. I mean, besides just the richness of the story itself, but just, my mom and I talking about it, and I have something forthcoming that we'll get more into that, because every book you read, there's a lesson, and it's just important that there are lessons that we can take, and, that, and whether it's to help someone else who might be going through a thing, or to help us, begin to navigate something that's happening in our own lives. Sometimes it's a cautionary tale.
Mhm.
Ooh, I know I don't want to do that. It could be through something that you have read or learned, whether it's in a book or just, a podcast, whatever, however you get your stories. And I just think that that's so important that we're able to tell them. Um,
Absolutely.
so, of course, I know you do a lot of writing. So,
Yeah.
is there anything on the horizon that we should be on the lookout for, or anything that's come out since then? What's up next?
What? So no, the girl at the back of the bus is my most recent, and that just came out this past February. So this upcoming February 2022, we'll have another dual multi-generational historical contemporary dual timeline, and that comes out on February the 7th.
Okay.
And this one deals with the Dust Bowl, with the Dust Bowl migrants coming from Oklahoma to California. And a
Wow.
lot of times, we think about the Grapes of Wrath and John Steinbeck, and Black people are just like missing from that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to all, we talk about the Okies and our minds immediately go to our Caucasian brother, sister. But my grandparents came from Oklahoma
Oh,
during
wow.
that's my
Okay.
grandfather, I should say. And my greats, they came from Oklahoma during that time. Where are they in the narrative?
Mm-hmm.
This is the opportunity to pay homage and celebrate my family. It's not personal, it's not autobiographical in any stretch of the imagination, but again, it does pay homage to those who have gone before me. And so I'm looking forward to that. So we'll have another dual timeline coming up. And then I actually started today. I said I'm going to start marking my start dates to see how long it takes me to finish a book.
Okay.
So I'm starting just in the research phase. Today I am starting another book. I can't talk about it yet because it
Right.
hasn't been, publicly spoken of by my publisher. But this book will come. It's my third dual timeline,
Okay. Okay.
and that'll come out September. So I'll have two books out next year, February and September.
All right. Well, we're friends now, so I'll be looking to have you back, because one of the things in the new year, I am looking to have an author a week. So y'all pray for me. So that means I do a lot of read. I can get to some of these books on these shelves that I haven't read yet. Plus all the new stuff that's coming out, because I do have publishers that send me stuff, and we book their authors and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot. So people say they can't keep up with me because I read too much. But one thing about it is it will give folks a chance. You may not read every book by every author, but if something, by us having these conversations, it will let you know what Black women are out here doing. And as I mentioned to you, next year we actually have a Black man who wrote a book of
Yeah.
poetry about Black women. So that's going to be cool. To get a brother's perspective on how wonderful we are.
Hey.
So hey, so I'm looking forward to that. It's a book of poetry. It's not somebody trying to tell us how to date, or not that.
Yeah.
Something that actually celebrates us.
Hello, exactly.
So looking forward to that next year. But I definitely will. You and I will stay in connection and look to see you again because I love what you do. As I've already said, my third time saying it. This is gonna be the third. One of my most favorite books of this year that I've read with all the reading that I do. So I appreciate you, Suzette, and I'm looking forward to what's coming up next. Let me see. We have a comment from someone. Thank you for a beautiful evening. We're both looking beautiful. Thank you. Could feel the spiritual energy coming from Suzette during this discussion. Such a heartfelt discussion. I'm looking forward to reading or listening to the book. Yes, please do. Please do. And I'm going to put it up again for anyone who may have come in a little later and not know, but it is The Girl at the Back of the Bus. And it can be found wherever books are sold. Yes, here's my copy. So yes, definitely. And the book, the first date in the book is December 1st, 1955, which was the date when Rosa Parks had her experience on the bus. So we're coming up on that anniversary a month from today, actually. So It was a good time to read that and kind of go along with that story. So once again, everybody, I almost forgot. Let me announce what's coming up next. We've got actually 2 more books for this year, one in 2 weeks, and then another is going to be in 3 because I'll do it the week after, not the week after Thanksgiving week, but the first week of December. And then that'll be it for this year. So we can gear up for next year. But our next book, and let me put this up, and this is actually a book that's being re-released. It's by Tananarive Due, and she will be with us in 2 weeks on November the 15th at 8 o'clock, same time, same place. So if you are a fan of Tananarive Due, please join us. You may have already read this before. This is a re-release of the book. So it just came out a month or so ago. So we will talk to her on the 15th. And then our very last book of the year will be All Her Little Secrets by Wanda Morris. And we'll be talking to her on Monday, December the 6th. So, I will be making the post on the social medias so that you'll get the dates and can, save all of that information. But this is just to show you what is forthcoming. So, these are what is forthcoming. So, thank you so much, Suzette. Hang on for a second. Good night. So, I thank you once again for being here with us. We love what you're doing and looking forward to seeing more from you. And to everyone who's watching, thank you for your time in joining us. If you watch it later, like I said, drop a replay, pick up a copy of the book, share this with a friend, do all the things to celebrate Miss Suzette and her great work.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We thank you and we'll see you again soon. All right. Bye-bye.